It's time for Health Futures with Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park, Money Radio Studios, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. If this is the first time you've tuned in, this show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. We've been coming at you live from this studio here in the Air Park for the last 5 years. If you want to catch some of our shows, we've done about 125, actually 225, and you can catch them up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. On the far right, you can hit the media button. Third button down is radio show, and you can catch our shows there. So what makes our show special is the guests that we bring to it. I am just the host. I bring the great content. I ask the questions, and our guest really brings a lot of the content, and at times I add to it. So today, I'm proud to bring two guests. Both have been on the show before. My guest here to the right is Cooney, and she is with Hospice of the Valley. And let me get the title right. You're Community Engagement?
Director of Community Engagement, exactly.
Director of Community Engagement.
I'm very impressed. 225 shows?
Yes.
You're prolific. That's great.
I've been called a lot of things, and I'll take that as a compliment.
There you go. That's a lot of education, so that's wonderful.
It is. And you know what? I've had yourself on before, and I had Susan Levine on before. Hospice of the Valley is doing extraordinary work here in our community, and our listening audience is going to hear about that in a second here.
Great.
And then just to her right, my left, is he sometimes refers to me as his carbon copy, but it is my dad, my old man, Sheldon Roth, a.k.a. Noodles. Welcome to the show, Noodles.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. And you know what? Please chime in at any time and deliver whatever you feel could be added to the subject matter that we're talking about. So I'd love to have you here on the show with us. And we're going to talk about a number of things. Obviously, we're going to talk about hospice. And this is the month of November, and it's National Hospice Month. It's also National Family Caregiving Month. And it is also the event that you guys are having. I want to plug it a couple times here on the show, is the Light Up Your Life event that you hold down at the Indian School Park. And that is, it's the week before Thanksgiving, right? Isn't that usually it, or a week after?
It is the Sunday before Thanksgiving.
The Sunday before Thanksgiving.
Light Up a Life. It always is. And it's a beautiful celebration. It's really, we're starting to enter the holidays. People who've had lost loved ones are missing them. They're not sure how they're going to get through the holidays. And this is a time that the whole community can get together and pay tribute to those we've loved and lost and remember them, celebrate them. It's upbeat, it's uplifting, it's poignant. It's at Steel Indian School Park, and it's at 6 o'clock. So as the sun's going down, we have these giant screens. People have been mailing us photos of their loved ones for months. We have over 700 already.
Wow.
And we put it to music, and we have a live choir singing, Valley Youth Theater this year, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful evening. They get to see their loved one's photo come up to a montage of music.
Do you have to RSVP or just...
You are welcome to come. It's just open to the whole public. Those who want photos, who may have missed the photo deadline because the video needs to be edited, they just bring a photo. We have these beautiful tables up front. There are Christmas trees out, and they can put their loved one's photo on the table.
I love it. And do you have to have been a hospice customer, so to speak?
Client?
Hospice of the Valley client?
Absolutely not. So, we don't have to have cared for you at all. This is a community celebration.
I love that.
A lot of people have sudden loss in their family, and there was no time to call hospice. That doesn't mean that they don't grieve and that they don't miss their loved ones, so it is open to all.
Love it. Absolutely love it. That is 6 o'clock Sunday, the week of Thanksgiving, and that would be the 18th of November, Indian School Park, 6 o'clock p.m., and it'll be a beautiful evening.
Yeah, you know what's really neat is I get there early because I want to greet people and visit with them. And some families have been there for years because it's so meaningful to them. It's a time to just stop with all the crazy shopping and everything else that goes on during the holidays and just focus on someone they loved who's not with them anymore, and remembering that and celebrating it. And they'll come and they'll maybe have T-shirts. They'll have a photo that they hold and sit while they watch and wait for their video to come up with the photo of their loved one. And it's a tradition, and it's really sweet.
And you see these families together year after year.
Yeah, some of them, yeah. Sometimes it's just, fresh, and it's a new person, a new family.
So to our listening audience, I know you've been a repeat guest here on my show, but many people know you from your days at Channel 12. And I think a lot of people don't understand why you made this transition. And if you could take our listening audience through the fact that, you gave up a broadcast career. It was 30-plus years, a very successful one. My father couldn't wait to meet you here today because he was a big fan of yours as well. But, there was a purposeful transfer, and there was something that happened in your life that caused you to make this change. And I would love for you to share that with us.
Well, it's a season. And Noodles, I'm thrilled. Exactly how many years did you watch me? Channel 12.
Well, probably if you were there for 15 years.
I was there 31 years.
31 years.
Then I must have watched you the
Oh,
whole
my
time.
goodness.
Because I've been in Arizona for 33 years.
Well, then that's fantastic. Well,
and
thank you.
Channel 12 was always my favorite
That was your
channel.
station. Oh, you're so
Still
sweet.
mine.
It still is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love watching Mark and Caribe. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that. I loved it. Oh, gosh. Every moment of that career was so rich and rewarding. But there's a season to everything. And it was time to sign up for another 4 years. And my two youngest boys were about to start high school. So that's my last 4 years with them. And I work evenings.
Wow. I
So
get it.
would have finished that contract as they left home for college, and I just couldn't do it. So it was time. I think some of those girls at the station, too, were thinking, okay, lady, you've been here 31 years. You ever going to leave so we get a chance? So it was time, and I wanted a mission. I was so blessed to educate the public and inform. But I'll tell you, to have that ability to have another career, an encore career afterwards that's also fulfilling with a super beautiful mission, comfort and dignity for all. I feel so blessed.
Yeah, it's a wonderful company, and you guys have an incredible reputation here in the Valley. I mean, you're the go-to, and do so much. And, for our listening audience, I get the privilege of recommending your services, your company's services, and beside them helping with the comfort, they help you with everything else that comes along with it. Recently, I had a family member, and they were just migrating over to hospice services, and I said, they'll get you all the equipment that you need. They'll provide you spiritual services. The list goes on and on. As you can hear, Jerry Rafferty in the background. What a great tune! Thank you, Wes. We're getting ready to go out on our first segment. We'll pick up on the second segment, talk a little bit more about Hospice of the Valley and what they bring to the community. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I got Lynn Sue Cooney from Hospice of the Valley and Noodles in the studio. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you, and we've got sunshine coming in on our studio today. And we're pleased to have Lynn Sue Cooney from Hospice of the Valley. She's the Director of Community Engagement. And I've also got my Papa Bear, Sheldon Roth, a.k.a. Noodles, here in the studio. And we're talking hospice. And, one of the things I said before the break was I have a family member that just recently experienced loss. And it is amazing what happens when you engage hospice. It's like you make one call, that's all. It's not Lerner and Rowe, it's Hospice of the Valley.
Aww.
Because they bring an entire army in, and whatever your needs are, whether it be nursing, whether it be social work, whether it be equipment, it is all delivered.
Yeah, it's a multidisciplinary team, and they're there to address the physical, the emotional, the social, the spiritual, all of it, and not just the patient, but also the family. You know, the interesting thing is you hear there are 75, 80 hospices in Arizona right now.
Is it crazy?
It's crazy. And it's really hard to know what they all offer or who has experience and who has expertise. And so you really do need to ask around. But the hardest thing for me as Director of Community Engagement is how many people are afraid of the word hospice. And we should ask Noodles this. I think people hear that and they think, oh, that's giving up.
The Grim Reaper.
I don't think people understand what the real meaning of hospice is, and I think that's where it sits.
And I will say this. I mean, the commercials that have been run that you're doing presently and that were done before by Hugh Downs. I mean, you know, I first of all, I love the logo because the logo is, you know, it can be a dove, it can be a hand, it can be whatever you want it to be. And I think that was the purpose behind that. But the message, and it is all about messaging. And, you know, Lindsay, you may or may not know this. I come from the consumer product goods world. I worked in brand management, and everything's about messaging. And the fact that you guys have coined the phrase, not for profit, but for comfort. Comfort is really what it's all about. It's making that individual comfortable. But even more importantly, when you're introducing comfort, you afford that family to have the ability to visit with them. And then you layer on home care like Cypress provides. Cypress can come in and help maintain the family unit, so to speak, make sure that the meals are being prepared, the laundry's being done, the dishes are being done. You know, everybody wants to bring in meals, everybody wants to visit, and afford them the opportunity to visit with their loved one.
And make memories, have some quality of life. You know, you mentioned not-for-profit, and I think when you talk about all the hospices, there are only 2 not-for-profits in Arizona or in the Valley. And I think it's important to understand what that means.
Please explain that.
Okay, so we were actually founded by volunteers 5 years before Medicare paid for hospice. So this preacher and 2 nurses volunteered their time to go into homes and help people with hospice care. So if you were dying of stomach cancer and you had the money for pain meds, they could do that. And if there wasn't any money, they went out in the community and raised it. So from the very beginning in our DNA, it's been about the care, not the reimbursement, because there was no reimbursement for 5 years. It was a volunteer program. So even now today, in 41 years, we've not turned anyone away who needed care, whether they were eligible for Medicare or not, whether they had money in the bank or not, whether they had insurance or not. They get the same care. Their care team has no clue who's paying and who's not. It's not about the reimbursement. It's about giving that family what they need.
Love it. And I sat in the studio probably about 3.5 years ago with Susan Levine, your former executive director. And I had the privilege of caring for this individual who has long passed now, but he lived to 103 years old.
Oh, wow.
And his name, and I can say, because he was a guest here on my show, he was a guest on my show at 102. His name was Dr. Avery Weissman. And that name doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but he was head of psychiatry for Harvard Medical School, and he was also head of psychiatry for Mass General. And he tells the story about 1970, 1971. He gets a phone call from this woman from Great Britain, and her name is Dame Cicely Saunders.
Yes, the mother of modern hospice.
And you know, he's written papers on thanology, and I had no idea what a thanologist was, but it's the study of death. And she came over to meet with him to talk about how do I deliver hospice to America. And he knew of somebody down at Yale. And while Dr. Weissman didn't get involved in it directly, he put the two together.
Wow.
And he did say that he had a nice dinner with her the night before she left for Yale's. And he kind of got googly-eyed, but he had the opportunity to really influence hospice back like in 1971.
Wow, that's
Isn't
amazing.
that crazy?
Yeah.
So it is really relatively new, and to hear the roots here 5 years before Medicare even paid for that benefit. Because right now, that's the thing I tell about all my clients. I want to introduce hospice, and you said this earlier to my father and talked about, the connotation that comes along with hospice. People think of it as death, the end, the Grim Reaper.
I'm giving up. I'm not going to, fight it anymore. It's an incurable terminal disease.
Exactly. And every single time I tell my clients that, we need to introduce hospice, invariably they say no. But when they do finally say yes, we should have done this earlier.
Yeah.
Because they see the army that comes around with them.
And everyone needs to be ready. You can be physically ready for hospice, but not emotionally ready. And it's everybody's has a different decision point at that, and there's no, magic wand or crystal ball on when it's right. But when you make that decision, invariably people say, oh, I had no idea. We could have used this support so much earlier.
Right. And the other interesting thing is you bring up the fact that you guys started long before Medicare started paying for this. You're one of 2 hospices here in the Valley that is a not-for-profit. You're the most recognized name, not only here, but really throughout the country because of what Hospice of the Valley has done, the reputation that you have. You have the largest endowment in our state. The last time I checked, it was probably close to $400 million, maybe over that now. You give away, and these are all numbers that are kind of ingrained in my head back from Susan Levine. She said you give away about $15 million worth of services every year.
We have a lot of charity care. Last year it was $10.5 million.
Wow, $10.5 million care for free. And then on top of which, you guys are so good at what you do that Medicare recognizes what you're doing. And you are in a pilot test, a 3-year program with a thing they call Medicaring, which enables, as I understand as a layperson, enables you to go through treatment and get hospice at the same time.
So it's for certain patients with certain conditions, but what they're trying to do is Medicare is trying to figure out, well, if we had people getting hospice care while they were still having their curative treatments, would the transition be easier to hospice, and would they have better quality of life? And we're finding that seems to be true. So hopefully at some point Medicare will decide to pay for palliative care before hospice.
That is so wonderful. I mean, so unbelievable to think about that, because typically if you're going to go on hospice, you've got to stop your medical care.
Right. Curative
Right.
care.
Curative care. You've got to stop curative care. Amazing. And obviously there's a profile that you're looking for, certain probably morbidities, whether it be CHF, COPD.
Certain conditions, and they have to live in a private home, not in an assisted living where they get some care, because they're wanting to study what it's like when you have none. So there are some things, but call us if you think you want to be in a program that allows you to get curative treatment and also the hospice care wrapped around you so beautifully. Call us and we'll come out and evaluate.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, it's halftime here, Lynn Sue and Noodles. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We're going to take a break right now. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're on segment number 3. And if you're just tuning in, I've got Lindsay Cooney here in the studio. She's the Director of Community Engagement for Hospice of the Valley. And I've got my Papa Bear here in the studio with me, Sheldon Roth, a.k.a. Noodles. And during the break, we were talking about, obviously health care, and we were talking about the fact that my Papa survived a pretty serious heart attack.
He looks great.
Isn't it amazing? There's an old line I always say, he should look good. I just got him embalmed.
Oh, gosh. No, I would never have guessed. He looks fantastic.
No, he does. He looks amazing. And I do want to give a big shout out because I don't even know who these folks are, but the EMTs up in Payson, because Dad was living there, they saw his condition, and rather than taking him to the regional hospital there, they air flighted him down to Osborne. And within 4 or 5 hours from that helicopter landing, and by the way, it was a 20-minute trip from Payson to the Osborne Hospital, they had him in the cath lab and opening up his artery that was the widow's maker that was 99% blocked.
Oh.
So
one stent.
They saved your life.
Saved his life. And, for me, I can never be thankful. Those guys, they're truly unsung heroes that do the work, and they're not there for the accolades. They know what to do and how to do it.
Thank goodness. That's
amazing.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you're doing well, Noodles.
I feel well.
And I do want to talk about unsung heroes. I mean, this is a great time of year. The month of November, when I kicked off the show, talked about it being National Family Caregivers Month. And, there are so many unsung heroes out there right now that are giving up their lives to help care for a loved one. It could be a spouse, it could be a parent, it could be an aunt, uncle, grandparent, or just a neighbor. And I really salute them, and I really want to take this opportunity to thank them for their service because they are making the ultimate sacrifice. So many of them give up their careers. So many of them give up what they're doing. A lot of them, like maybe you or me, Linsu, are in the sandwich generation where they have kids and they have an older parent that they're helping out. And it is amazing the work that they are doing. And this is the month that has been dedicated. Governor Doug Ducey put an announcement out today saying, he honors those family caregivers that are making that ultimate sacrifice. There are about 50 million of them across the country.
And they're stressed, they're exhausted, they're juggling so many things, and none of them are trained for this.
None of them.
They walk into it, especially in the case of maybe dementia, a loved one with dementia. And there are so many different kinds, and some come with behaviors, and they don't really know what to do, and they're isolated, and there's not a lot of support. So they really are unsung heroes. You're right.
Can we make an appeal to our listening audience? Because there's so many of them out there, and many of them come from my dad's generation, the greatest generation, who really took the oath, sickness and health literally, and they don't ask for help. They think that this is what I'm supposed to do. And we have statistics from AARP that couples that are 65 and older caring for one another, 63% of the time the caregiver predeceases the care recipient. Yeah. So my appeal to you, our listening audience, if you know of somebody that is doing the hard work, that labor of love, don't ask to help. Just do.
Yes.
Just do, because they're not going to accept your help. And, it means running to the grocery store.
When you're going to the store, get their list.
Exactly.
And shop for them.
And if you're making a casserole, make 2.
Yeah.
And just deliver it. So this is a time of year that we honor those family caregivers because you know what? We're an aging demographic, and it's only going to get more complicated as we get older. And we know the statistics are daunting. We know the numbers, 10,000 a day. That's 3.6 million a year. The oldest of the baby boomers are now 72. So we've got our work cut out for us, and we as a community need to recognize those unsung heroes and help them to be better caregivers. So that's my appeal today.
Well, I'm glad you said it. Someone needed to say it. And, gosh, our hearts go out to all those folks that are doing that.
And you talk about dementia. So that makes it even more difficult.
More challenging.
And I do want to give a shout out to HOV. HOV, by the way, is the acronym for Hospice of the Valley. So Hospice of the Valley and Banner Alzheimer's Institute has this great program. It's called the Fellowship Grant Program. And the Fellowship Grant Program awards, I can't remember, is it 10 grantees a year? It could be 15.
Well, Hospice of the Valley does 12.
12.
But I think we're going to increase it this year. And these fellowships are just to get people thinking about projects that they can do that improve quality of life for a caregiver and someone with dementia. So sometimes it's art. We're actually going to start shooting some videos in the next week or two that the Phoenix Fire Department wants to do. What happens? There'll be scenarios to train emergency workers. What happens if you go to Safeway and somebody is kind of fallen in the parking lot and is disoriented and is talking about picking their children up from school, but they're obviously maybe 70 or 80 and they're living in the past. How do you not frighten them? How do you calm them? How do you get them help and figure out who needs to come and pick them up? So these dementia projects are really going to be helpful in all different walks of life.
I have chills because I think you know this, that one of those grants went to one of my colleagues, Michelle Cornelius,
Yep.
and it just almost happened to that degree. Now, she is doing a workshop or fellowship grant on improv techniques to help families and individuals cope with the throes of being in dementia. So exactly that happened. She, right now they're almost done because it goes the full year. So here we are in November, and she has been presenting to a number of interns, a number of people, and one of the people that attended her class, this improv technique class, had somebody fall in a parking lot, was disoriented, and she came back and said, I used those techniques that you taught me and was able to help this individual. So, I mean,
Isn't that
kudos.
wonderful?
I mean, really, really kudos. I mean, not only does Hospice of the Valley help you put the program together, they give you grant dollars to do it. Mm-hmm. And, at the end of the day, for us at Cypress HomeCare Solutions, at the end of this year, we're going to have something really nicely packaged up.
It's going to make a difference in real people's lives right now. It's great to do research to find ways to extend people's lives and make their symptoms better with dementia. But there are people living with it right now who need care, who need communication techniques, who need support because they're living with it now. They can't wait for the research. They've got to figure out how they can make their loved ones' lives good now, because as they stop being able to speak and communicate, the most important thing is making them feel safe,
right,
and happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is a great segue to talking about a project that you guys have been working on for a couple of years.
We're so excited.
Can you share with our listening audience, because it does involve dementia and Alzheimer's?
It does. It is so exciting. So we have purchased the property where the old Scottsdale School District offices are at 44th and Indianola, just south of Indian School. We're in zoning, so we hope to break ground early next year. But we're going to build the most amazing dementia care and education campus. So we say campus because it will have a hospice home for dementia patients. It will have a daycare and adult activity care center, so that if you needed to go somewhere but you have nowhere where to leave your loved one, a safe place. Right next door is going to be a child care center, because guess what? Preschoolers have no clue when someone has dementia, and they interact, and people with dementia respond to children. It's beautiful. And then there's an education center. We are going to educate professionals and also family caregivers in our community so that they learn how to communicate and make those meaningful connections with someone who's losing the ability to speak.
State of the art. And I love the intergenerational piece, because, one of the things that, is the last to leave people that are afflicted with this disease is those memories back from when they were a child. So they know all the nursery rhymes. They know all the songs. They know a lot of the things that these children are going through. So they themselves are almost children.
They'll be engaged.
I love it. All right. Well, we're down 3 segments, Lynn Sue. I can't believe it. Noodles, can you believe we're down 3? We've got one more to go. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I've got Lynn Sue Cooney, the Director of Community Engagement from Hospice of the Valley, here in the studios. I got my Papa Bear, Sheldon Roth, a.k.a. Noodles, here in the studio. One more to go. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're on segment number 4. If you missed the first 3, catch them up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button on the top right, third button down, it's radio shows. You'll catch about 225 that we've been bringing to you for the last 5 years. And you'll catch the first 3 segments of our show here. If you're just tuning in right now, there's the cowboy, and it is working for the weekend. Lover boy, looking forward to the weekend. Thank you, Wes. If you're just tuning in, I've got Lynn Cooney, the Director of Community Engagement for Hospice of the Valley, and I've got my dad, Sheldon Roth, Noodles Roth, here in the studio with us. And, you know, I'm looking at the publication, Love and Life After 50. And, you know, you and I have been side by side writing columns for over a year now. So
Opposite pages.
Opposite pages. And you know what? Your picture is definitely a lot better than mine.
It's retouched.
That's maybe what I need to do
yeah,
to mine.
Just have somebody edit it.
Exactly. Photoshop is
Exactly.
great. But, you know, you wrote a piece this past month, and it's about grandparents. I'd love for you to talk about it because there is a really nice piece here tying Hospice of the Valley, Ryan House,
and
together.
Phoenix Children's
and
Hospital.
Phoenix Children's
yeah, it's
Hospital.
a collaboration from all three. And it's a free program to anyone in the community who needs it. And I don't think a lot of people know about it. And it's, when you think about it, now, Noodles, I'm going to ask you this. If you lost a grandchild, you would be grieving the loss of that precious baby or child, but you would also be grieving watching your adult son or daughter grieve the loss of their child, right? It's double grief.
No question. It would be very difficult to digest. The loss of anybody that's in the family is always difficult. And whether it's been a long illness or something that happened suddenly, these are always difficult.
Oh, yeah. So you're grieving, oh, I've lost this precious grandchild, and now I get to see my adult children suffering.
Right.
And I can't cry because if they're going to cry on my shoulder, I have to be strong. And so grandparents have a very specific kind of dual grief. And we realize that they need a different kind of place to work through that grief so that they can be strong, share with other grandparents how they can support their adult children. So New Song Center for Grieving Children created a program just for them. Phoenix Children's Hospital and Ryan House are partners, and it's really beautiful. We talked to some of these grandparents who say they don't know how they would have gotten through it without it. You know, men are taught to be very macho, and they can't show their grief. And this gentleman in the story that I wrote in the paper said he would escape all the sadness by running off to coaching practice, and then he would feel so guilty that he would sob in the car on the way home.
Oh.
I can almost understand that.
Yeah.
You know, it's understandable.
What a great program. And you know, Ryan House is a service that was, I believe, created by Hospice of the Valley originally. Now you've birthed them and they're off on their own, and they've got a relatively new executive director that I've known for about 25 years. You know, Tracy Leonard Warner.
She's wonderful.
She is amazing. And Dad, I think you know Tracy. You know her husband, Randy, the Honorable Randy Warner, who serves on the bench and does a wonderful job over there. And I was telling you earlier, I had a really good friend who was a multiple guest here on in my studio, Bill Strauss, who was in the care unit that's right upstairs.
The
from
hospice section, yes, upstairs.
And got amazing care there.
Aww.
And that's one of the things that I really want to impart to our listening audience is my personal experience with people like Bill, as well as people like the clients that I serve. The care that they get, not only at home, and you know, Susan talked about it really well, talking about hospice isn't a place, it's a concept. And you know, many people think about it as a place. And she made it very clear, hospice, 98% of it is delivered right in the home, and that's where it should be. But one of the great things about Hospice of the Valley is they do have these places, these facilities that you can go to if home is not the place. And they're all over the valley.
We have 10 hospice care homes. But if you're elderly and you maybe don't want to be alone at the very end, or you're just not able to give that 24/7 care at the very end, you want additional support, it's available. And also it's available for respite. Medicare will pay for respite.
Nice.
So if you get the flu and you're taking care of a loved one, how can you do that? You can bring them to one of our hospice care homes and they'll get 24/7 care while you rest and get better. And it gives you a break.
Absolutely love it. And then right across from your article, your column.
Yeah, there you are.
And you know, there's a column that And truth be told, behind every great guy, there is a great woman. And my wife, Susie, who has been a guest on the show, helps me write these columns every month. And this month's edition is it's entitled Begin with the End in Mind. And, Lynn Sue, you and I have talked about this before, about planning. And I've talked about it on the show so many times that people need to plan. They need to plan for what is inevitable. And, need to have that conversation. And that is not just one conversation. That's a continuing conversation. I know my father, he is a planner, and he told me the only thing I needed to do was tip the limo driver. He said everything else has been taken care of.
Oh, Noodles, that's great.
But it's true. I mean,
he needs to teach a class then.
He does. And he also knows this on the converse side. My father-in-law, Susie's father, died unexpectedly, and he didn't have a plan. And my oldest at the time was 16 or 17 years old. She jumped the plane with my wife, Susie, when her grandfather, Susie's dad, was still alive. But while they were in flight, they disconnected him. And the next day, she was at the funeral home picking out caskets and at the cemetery picking out plots. And I remember being on the phone with her, and she said, "Dad, I'm not old enough for this. This just doesn't feel right." And I'm like, "I need you there for your mom." And, so many people can relieve the family members of that stress and that pain by having these conversations. Having conversations about terminal illness, having conversations about where you would like your remains to be, all of those things before it's time.
Yeah, it's too late when you can't talk. If you're incapacitated and you have a stroke and you can't speak,
right,
they're guessing what you would want. And if you have children, adult children who don't agree, then they're fighting about what you want.
Right. And then, talk about DNRs, having that conversation. And especially when...
All right, you got to tell people what DNRs are. They may not know.
Do not resuscitate. And, in the state of Arizona, you have to have, if you are living alone, which, by the way, our population, 65 and older, 1/3 lives home alone, you should have this bright orange sheet on your refrigerator with the DNR orders that do not resuscitate. So if paramedics do show up, they know to look at their fridge to see if that's there, and if it's there, they are not going to bring you back to life. And how many people are brought back to life, and they're angry because they knew they did not want to be brought back. So, Lindsay, we've got just about 30 seconds. Any parting comments you want to leave our listening audience?
I don't think people know that Hospice the Valley does much more than hospice. We have palliative care. We have grief counseling. We have mindfulness meditation. There's so many ways that we can help. And someone answers the phone. You can talk to a nurse 24/7, 365 days a year. So if there's anything that we can answer or help with, don't hesitate to call.
And that number is?
602-530-6900. And if we talked about stuff you want to know more about, you can go to our website, hov.org.
That's really easy. Thank you, Lynn Sue. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and it was so nice to meet you, Noodles.
Noodles, any parting comments?
I enjoyed being here.
I enjoyed having you.
And I enjoyed being with Lynn Sue Cooney.
There you go. Well, listen, make it a great day. Have an incredible weekend. For West, go ASU, right? ASU needs to win out to go to the Rose Bowl. You've been listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And Lynn Sue, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress HomeCare Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.